And now it's time to get hot. I mean, the weather is certainly very hot, making me very sweaty.
Oh, yeah.
So, much like the characters in the series, I think it would be super nice to spend a day indoors at an ice rink where it's all nice and cool. Skate up the ice, burn up the ice, have the shards of ice fly in your face and melt on your face in nice cool water.
Oh, that sounds so great right about now.
Yeah, so nice and refreshing. And hot is kind of a refreshing one-shot because it is an ice hockey manga from Akira Amano. I think this is the first ice hockey manga one-shot we've had in a while. Like, I can't remember any ice hockey series in Jump ever. But it's a very rare and underrepresented sport in general. So that makes it quite unique in of itself.
I was gonna say, are we talking like just Jump, or are we talking about ice hockey manga in general? Because I feel like I've seen ice hockey manga, like one series, but I can't remember the name of it, and I'm not even sure it's entirely ice hockey. So, I mean, what you said is true. Like, out of all the sports that could be turned into sports manga, ice hockey is not something you see tackled almost ever. Which I'll definitely give this one shot. That is definitely a sport I would like to see explored more in manga.
I was referring to Jump in general, that there hasn't been many ice hockey manga in its history, but also in manga in general, it's a very underrepresented sport. Jeff Ruberg, our good friend over on Twitter, he works on the Shonen Jump app for Viz Media, he has been tweeting recently about his search for good ice hockey manga for him and his girlfriend to read, and they have found very slim pickings. All in Japanese, none translated, and very few series in that pool, that niche of ice hockey manga to choose from. So he was very excited about this manga in particular.
That's interesting. Yeah, see, as far as sports I would like actually watch, because I'm not sure if you could tell, I don't really watch a lot of sports, but ice hockey is like one of the few sports like I've always actually wanted to go see like live, you know, because I one of my best friends is like super into hockey, and you know, sometimes, you know, when he comes home, he'll grab the TV in the living room, you know, whenever there's a hockey game on or whatever. And, you know, that's actually like the one sport I'll actually, you know, sit down and watch with him, because, you know, I'm not super invested in like any other sport. I was kind of interested in football for a while thanks to Ice Shield 21, but that's mostly faded away at this point. So ice hockey to me, like I've seen enough of the actual sport that I could say that I think it's actually legitimately like exciting, and I personally get really into it. So I was kind of interested in Hot when I saw Jump advertising this. I was interested in checking this out, especially since, you know, I haven't really read a lot of Amano's works. Like, I've read maybe a volume of Reborn, but that was probably like 10 years ago at this point. And I'm not really familiar with Reborn outside of the first volume at all. And I haven't really read any Elda Live, though. I am interested in checking that out, especially since Amano's color works, like, as far as I've seen, are like really beautiful. And I think she does an excellent job at color pages.
To touch upon my experience with Amano Sensei's works, I have not read much of Reborn. All my knowledge of it is secondhand. I think the only chapter of it I've read is the last chapter, which I don't even remember why I read that. And I've read the first couple of chapters of Eld Live, and in contrast to you, Colton, I was actually very turned off by Amano's color work.
Really?
Because I thought the colors were too bright and garish, and it made the series very difficult for me to read because it would actually detracted from the art, in my opinion. Like, the colors in of itself, when it's an illustration, is fine, but when I'm reading the comic, I was just finding my eyes just completely wandering, and it definitely did not help because it's a text-heavy series. The just combination was just not working for me.
That's interesting. I honestly didn't think about it like that. I think that's a good point. I never really thought about her color pages as far as like the actual readability of her comic. I could see how that would be distracting.
Mm-hmm. But in terms of color pages and in terms of illustrations, like even the color page for Hot, it's a really good illustration. I think, this is a nice image. It conveys a lot of action, like that, oh, okay, this kid has just slid down the ice. You see some shards, like, going up. And I think the combination of the blues and the whites here are really nicely done. You got an almost watercolor effect on, like, the rink of the, not the floor of the ice, and then the background is just this white bluish kind of weird skyish haze, but it all works. Like, there's no distinction, like the distinction for the floor is just made very subtly, but it's not like separated necessarily from the background. It's like one arrangement of these blue and white splotches, but she's able to use very subtle like markings within those to indicate the line of the floor. So, I think she can do some really good things with her colors in subtle ways that make for really nice illustrations. But to get into the plot of this one-shot. So, Hot is not just a funny, like, this is, I'm referring to an ice skating manga, with an ice hockey manga with a adjective, a descriptor that is its opposite. What you wouldn't think. It's not just some funny thing like that. Well, it sort of is, because Hot is also referring to the main character's name, which is Own, and that Own comes from like the same like meaning as the Own in onsen, which is hot spring. So Own means heat, as is the translator's note here, but you could also read Own as hot, as in like onsen, you could translate that to hot spring. So Own, you could also translate to hot if you choose to. But yeah, so the main character's name is Own, and he was given this name by his grandfather because heat trumps ice, and his family, the Hamino family, has been doomed for generations to not make nice with ice. Ice is their mortal enemy that has killed his ancestors in horrifically brutal and funny ways, including impalement, as is later revealed. Like, it's ridiculous. Heart failure, because someone slept on the ice. Food poisoning, because someone ate bad, like, an ice shake, like, slushy thing, and then frostbite. So it's, like, all sorts of weird ways that his family members have died due to ice-related incidents over the years. So his grandfather got super superstitious and mad and put Own through a really weird training regimen, because his logic is so twisted. He thinks the only way to overcome the family's curse is to win in the most combative ice sport, ice hockey. Since a young age, he has trained Own to be the best ice hockey player ever. By when he was a kid, he made Own, like, he told Own that his brothers were a stick and a pup, so those were his first toys. And that he made him train juggling eggs with the ice hockey stick, lying to him, saying the eggs belong to a ferocious dragon who loves her babies, implying that if he drops them, the dragon will come and kill him. And then later, he makes him juggle an ice hockey puck on top of a bouncy ball. Like, so he's put him through all these weird, crazy training regimens from Bert, and so Owen has become ridiculously good at ice hockey, but he could not give a single crap about his grandfather's superstition. It's just all a pain to him. It's just so annoying. So he's like, you know what? No, you kind of forced this on me. I don't want to do it, so no, I'm not going to play that. So, like, Owen's grandfather, he works at this shrine, right? And so does Owen. He also works at this shrine. So, one day, some ice hockey players from the local school are, like, walking around the shrine. One of them, Takahashi, who's, like, the captain of the ice hockey team, he's kind of frustrated that their local ice rink is being given to a neighboring ice hockey club because they're more prestigious, and so their team can practice. So he doesn't watch where he's going, and he like bumps into a rock and stubs his toe. And then he gets mad, so he kicks the rock away, and it goes into Owen's direction. But Hone, who is like sweeping with just a broom, he kind of like grabs the rock in the air and just like tosses it around, and then like just throws it back into a wall. And it's like, oh, and that's an indication, oh, he's really good with a hockey stick. You know, if he's that good at broom, he could be good at hockey. So Takahashi's trying to go and recruit him, but Owen is like, dude, you threw a rock at me. So he's eating this cookie, so he drops the cookie, and he shoots the cookie into Takahashi's mouth with a broom, which is hilarious. And he's like, no, I'm not gonna, join your ice hockey team because it pisses me off. And so then he asked Takahashi to like repay him for the breaking the window because he threw the rock, the window got broken. And Takahashi doesn't do that like immediately. Like they run away because his grandpa arrives on the scene, and his grandpa is an uncontrollable maniac, as his own backstory reveals. So they run away, but later the club manager comes back to pay him for that, and Owen's just pissed off because Takahashi didn't do it himself. But then the next day, he observes, like, Takahashi being bullied by, like, a prestigious high school ice hockey team who is, like, kind of renting out the rink and preventing Takahashi's team from practicing. And that's when he gets an exclamation from the club manager that Takahashi, like, works super hard for the sake of his club. He spends all his money for the club, like including renting out the ice rink and equipment. And the reason why he didn't deliver like the money to repay the breaking of the window himself was because he had to work that night, but the money was from him. And so Owen learns that Takahashi has a good character, and so he kind of feels bad for, assuming the worst of him. So he's like, okay, I'm going to help this guy challenge this other hockey team to give them the right to practice on this rink because it means a lot to him. And so they play a game, and he's super good. Basically, he's the only one who's really good at the team and basically does all the work. And the other team thinks for a minute, oh, wait a minute, he's not moving around much, so he must suck at skating, and that's his weakness. But then he's like, no, you just insulted me. You said that I was only, like, half qualified to be on this rink, so I decided to only, like, use the upper half of my body, because I'm petty and wise guy like that. But, if you really want me to take this seriously, okay, it's your funeral. And so then he reveals that he's actually really good at skating, too, because, of course, his grandpa made him practice for that. And, yeah, and then, basically, it becomes no contest. But he doesn't score the winning point himself. He has the puck bounce off the post to go in Takahashi's direction so that Takahashi would make the scoring shot to, like, have him, since he's the club leader, prove that, he has the determination, dedication, and skill to, like, make his dream come true by himself and all that. And so, yeah, they win. Takahashi's team gets to use the ice rink, but Owen is still like, no, I'm not going to play ice hockey. I submitted my letter of resignation. I'm not doing that. But the chapter ends with, like, Takahashi, like, giving Owen a t-shirt called I Love Ice Hockey and saying, wear this and you'll be convinced to be passionate about the sport. And that's just where the one-shot ends. So it's not like Owen changes his mind about not playing ice hockey or anything. So it's not like, it feels like there isn't much of a resolution to the character arc there, but that's basically the plot. And it's kind of like a standard plot in many respects, and it goes pretty quick in the sense that, there's this struggling team, and they need help from a really good player, and the good player helps them, and they defeat them. So that's kind of like one of those more basic first chapter plots.
Yeah, it's nothing that we haven't seen before.
Yeah. So to me, what makes this one shot stand out is the character of Owen himself, just because I like that he's this very impassionate melancholic and like he just does not care. He has so much ennui and lack of interest in the sport and in the people and everything around him. He's just going around everything with like begrudged expressions, like, ugh, I have to do this, I have to get involved. But like, he's a good person at heart because he recognizes, okay, this guy isn't such a bad dude. I'll help him out, and then I'll let him give the winning shot, for like his morale and all that. So that distinguishes him from a guy like Ryoma Echizen, who's just a total jerk and so self-centered, egotistical. He's unbearable. Like this guy, he has a conscience. He has like empathy, and he actually cares about people, but he just does not want to be caught up in anyone else's rhythm or go along with like what they want him to do. Like he wants to go at his own pace and do his own things and not be bothered by the world and the people around him. So I do kind of enjoy that personality. I do think it makes for a funny character, though in terms of like long-term sustainability, like the dynamic he has with him and Takahashi, I don't think that their chemistry is like really, really worked for me in terms of like, how they interacted with each other, because, Owen is more of a straight man kind of character, and Takahashi, he's constantly yelling. Like his nickname is given in the chapter is Talks a Lot E, which is, well, kudos to the translation on that one, because it must have been difficult to kind of find an equivalent to whatever the original pun was, but that worked really well. But yeah, I mean, the nickname is certainly appropriate because Takahashi does talk a lot, and he yells all his lines. So to me, he kind of graded as a character a little bit. Like he's pretty a simple, good-natured guy, and that's it. So, like, in terms of, like, the long-term, like, dynamic between these characters, like, I don't know, I didn't feel the connection so much as I felt like I understand where Owen is coming from and, like, what he wanted to do. But, like, if this were to be expanded into a series, I have to wonder, like, what's going to be, like, the tipping point that makes Owen join the club? Or, like, is there going to be more to Takahashi beyond, like, this simple characterization we're presented with here? And this is only one shot, so in terms of the self-contained story, there's a clear like conflict that gets resolved by the end of it, but it still ends at a point that wasn't terribly satisfying to me. Like I didn't feel like, oh yeah, here's the heart, here's the feels of the story, man. Like to me, this was more of a comedy. I mean, where it shined most were the comedic moments, and I think that's what Amano was going for, because there were so many ridiculous elements to it, especially like the backstory for Owen, like all the stunts, all the weird training that his grandfather puts him through from his childhood,
literally from 0 years old.
Like, clearly it's not to be taken too seriously, because, like, as a baby, he's being made to do all these ridiculous hockey things. So, of course, he's, like, superhumanly good at hockey, it seems. So, yeah, I mean, in terms of, like, the comedic moments, I think there were a lot of funny stuff. Like, I thought it was really funny when he shot his cookie into Takahashi's mouth. That was, like, there's just a lot of personality to Own for such a character devoid of passion and interest in the world around him. So, I do like that. I did kind of gravitate towards that. But I feel I've been talking a lot, but that's because I also know that Colton, you didn't have much to say about this. I was just trying to get out all the ideas I had to start off.
Sid's right. I haven't been talking too much because I was, I want to say 99.9% bored with most of this one shot, which, I mean, I didn't really think it was, like, bad. It just nothing about it clicked with me at all, except for the small moments of comedy here and there. Like, I didn't even really think they were laugh out loud funny. I mostly was just kind of like, like, I kind of chuckled at, like, stuff like, On's grandfather literally giving him a hockey stick and puck as a newborn child. Like, you know, stuff like that is kind of funny. But I think that, I mean, I don't really know where to pinpoint my boredom with this one shot, because like I was saying earlier, like, I think ice hockey is, like, you know, to me, it's one of the most exciting sports that, like, I will actually sit down and watch. So I don't know. I guess I was just kind of disappointed in how, like, most of, like, the hockey match in this one shot was conveyed, because, like, I don't really know. And see, and this is a problem with me not diving into Amano's work almost at all, because, like I said earlier, I've only read the first volume of Reborn, and obviously her art back then is so much different than it is now, and even then I don't really have a very clear memory of, like, what her art was like back at the start of Reborn even, but it's evolved since then, obviously. But, like, I don't know, I felt like as far as the hockey match went, like, to me, like, her art was, like, I don't know. I want to say messy, but, like, I'm not even sure if that's the right word. Like, I had a hard time trying to, like, actually read what was going on. I had a hard time actually trying to tell, like, you know, what was going on during the match. Because, like, I feel like her art isn't clean enough for this kind of thing. At least to me anyway. Like, I think that's the thing, is I would love to see an ice hockey manga, but I don't think that Amano is the right artist for this kind of thing. Like, I just don't think her art is necessarily, I don't want to say it's not good enough, because I don't necessarily think she's a bad artist. I just don't think she's a right fit for the subject material, I guess. Because, like I said, I think hockey is very exciting, but, like, you know, since I had a hard time trying to tell mostly what was going on, like, I couldn't really get into the match at all.
I don't think Amano's art is messy so much as she uses so much line work that the panels become really hard to read. I really agree with you that the action sequences, not just the hockey match itself, but even before that, when The Rock is coming towards Owen and he's, like, maneuvering it with his broom, even sequences like those were really hard to follow in terms of what is the action going on here between these panels. I said before that I think Amano is a really good illustrator, and her still illustrations convey a lot of good information through subtle touches in her art. But in these, like, sequences, like, I'm having trouble following the flow of the movement, like how things are moving between panels.
Yeah.
And her use of line work, it goes so overboard. To turn the attention back to, like, that scene where Owen is, like, throwing the rock with the broom, like, there's so many lines that are happening here. First, there are, like, these impact lines that are supposed to indicate, like, this is the momentum of the hit, but then there's these speed lines that are, like, zooming in towards it that are trying to indicate the position of where the rock was. There's, like, the strike. There's, like, these lines that are supposed to indicate the strike of the broom, and it's just really confusing, like, where the direction of the movement we're supposed to focus on is. And it isn't really a dynamic composition either, because we're looking straight on at Owen, and he's, like, flinging the broom in front of him, but the rock is moving sideways to the right, and then the sound effect towards that, the whack, is, like, moving towards the bottom. Like, there's just so many different directions the line work is moving here that I don't understand, like, where I'm supposed to look, what I'm really supposed to understand in terms of what is happening just within this, you know, single panel. Like, you know, if I look at it just, like, as a cool image, like, you know, it's sort of good. I mean, it's fine on its own, but then when I'm trying to understand, like, what the movement within this is, I don't understand it, and especially in relation to all the other panels preceding it, I don't understand how we got here with the rock, when he, like, first gets it in, and he's, like, moving it, we were like, how did it get to this point? And so, then we get into the ice hockey match in itself, and then those are like amplifying those problems in that one page even more, because now we have more characters involved and they're going in multiple different directions, and ultimately what's really happening here is just a back and forth, but I'm not sure like where the position of the characters are supposed to be, and a lot of it is due to also there's so much like constraint in these panels, like so much is like crammed into these panels that we don't really get a good shot of the ring and shot of like the positions of the characters. So I'm not really sure like where Owen is supposed to be, where the other players are supposed to be, and so it's like it to me it seems like, oh, they're just wherever they need to be in this scene, but like I don't know how that relates to like how they're playing the game. Ultimately, it doesn't matter much in the context of this game, because once Owen gets the puck, it's like it just doesn't matter. He just keeps the puck. I mean, they try to rush him at one point, but like when they're trying to push him out of the ring, like I don't understand where the edge of the rink is to begin with. So when they're trying to do that, I'm like, oh, that's what they're trying to do. I didn't understand. So again, like the sense of space and where the characters are in this match was just completely confusing, and adding to the problems I was discussing before with like, I don't understand where the line of action is, what is the action I'm supposed to focus on within a panel and within the sequence of panels. Like, it's really messy in terms of this action in general. So, like, I don't have experience, like, Reborn was a shonen fighting manga, so I don't know, like, how Amano communicated action in that. And L's Live, I think, is like the same way as an action manga. But like, as in terms of sports action, like I don't think, it didn't really come together for me because I couldn't understand like how the sport was being played at all. To me, what I took away from the chapter and what I like ended up enjoying was just the comedy again, and the characters, mostly just Owen and his grandpa. But, like, as an actual sports manga, and in terms of, like, getting invested in the sport and, like, feeling the excitement, the energy, the action of the sport, like, you know, you have characters colliding with each other. You have, like, the opponent team, like, bum rushing Owen. But I did not feel the impact of their blow. Like, literally, a guy crushes into Owen. He rams into Owen. But I didn't feel like the impact of like how he was getting hurt when they were getting rough with him. Like, it just did not communicate. Oh, they bashed into this guy. They flew him all the way across the other side into the wall. Like, that's what's going on in the scene. But I was like not really feeling that just from the images itself. I had to like take a step back and like flip back the pages and like, wait, oh, that's what they did, oh. But, like, in a great sports manga, you feel that. You feel every blow. You feel, like, every kick. You feel like you're in the action. Like, you can kind of viscerally understand, like, what that action feels like, how it hurts, how tired the characters are. Like, if they're, you know, getting physically hurt or damaged, like, you should feel that pain.
Like, at heart, a sports manga should really be just as good as any battle manga.
Yeah, I mean, exactly. And, you know, also, you just like in real life, if you're watching a sport, you know, you can see someone, like, get hurt, or like you can see someone make that kick, and you can like feel like, okay, you can see and you can like imagine, and you can, because it's right there in front of you. Oh my gosh, so this is what's happening. Oh, this guy got hurt, this guy got like crushed by all these other guys. Oh my god,
oh man,
that
yeah,
looks
like
painful. You should be able to see and feel that.
Yeah, especially when it comes to ice hockey in particular. Like, I can't even like talk about like how many games I've watched with my friends where like watching actual ice hockey is exciting because like you see people just like slam the puck just every which way. You have guys like ramming each other into the wall, and every time something like that happens, I wince. Like, I was kind of hoping I would feel something like that while reading this one shot, but like, again, like you said, whatever like impact some of these moments are, you know, should have, like, it's just not there at all.
Mm-hmm. And I didn't mention this at the top of the show, but like as a kid, I did play ice hockey pretty regularly. So, I know the sensation, the feeling of like skating across the ice and feeling that friction, of sliding, of feeling like disoriented on the ice rink and like ramming into people, like getting knocked into the rink, all that kind of stuff. Like the sensation of hitting the hockey stick with the puck with the hockey stick and all that. So, I did not get any of those visceral sensations. None of that like came back to me as I was reading this one shot, when I was reading this action. And like, if a great sports manga, like they'll make you, even if you haven't played the sport, like they should make you feel like what that sensation would be. And like, so you can really kind of feel like, oh my gosh, you're there with these characters and like you're feeling their struggle and pain.
Yeah.
But like, I just did not get that from the action in this chapter at all.
I sort of have to disagree with one of your points earlier. I wish I got as much out of the characters and comedy that you did, because like, I don't think the comedy's bad. Like, to me, there are good ideas in there for like jokes and stuff, but like, I didn't really think they were executed that well, or at least not in a way that like I thought was funny. And I mean, I didn't really care about Own like at all, but and I've never read Prince of Tennis. I've maybe read like a volume, like 10 years ago at this point. But like, your comparison between Own and Ryoma, because I kind of at first thought like what you said about Ryoma being like basically being an insufferable prick. I kind of thought about Own, but like the more I thought about it, like Own's not really like, he's not a bad person at all. He's not completely arrogant. Like, he's capable of seeing like the good in people, and he respects Takahashi at least a little bit by the end, which is nice. But like, I don't know. I guess that's my problem with the characters too, is I could forgive the lackluster action as far as the actual sport went, as long as like I was invested in the characters. And honestly, I thought the characters were so basic that I had a hard time feeling any kind of attachment to them, honestly. And I think it would have been nice for Owen to have at least some kind of character arc, or at least have some kind of resolution to his character arc. Because like you said, it just kind of ends with Owen really being the same person and still being kind of apprehensive towards ice hockey in general. So, like, Owen's not a bad character, but like, I think he's the kind of character that I think I would have to spend more time with in order to become more attached to him, I guess. And like I said, everybody else was just so basic that I just, you literally could have replaced them with any other character with a different name and design. And, I think the story and whatever feelings I had during the one shot would have just stayed the same.
Yeah. Owen is not a very compelling character, but he had a personality, at least, so I could latch onto that.
That's fair, yeah,
but
I agree.
At the same time, while I kind of like the amusing dynamic between him and his grandfather, and how crazy his grandpa was, to me, like, the dynamic between Owen and his grandpa were, like, pretty similar to Yawara and her grandfather and Yawara. Except, Naoki Urasawa is a great sequential storyteller and knows how to communicate action in his story really well, and is actually really great at comedy too. So, honestly, if you want a series that's like similar in terms of like just the dynamic between these characters, I would point you to Yawara, I guess. It's not an ice hockey manga, it's a judo manga, but so that's like the comparison that immediately came to my mind. But, I did like that dynamic still within this chapter, even if it felt familiar to me. But yeah, the other characters, they were basic. I actually did not care for Takahashi at all, because he was just so simple.
Yeah.
And I honestly found the fact that he was like yelling all his lines and they were all bold, in bold text, and it was like, okay, I'm actually getting exhausted reading these guys' lines, even though it wasn't that text dense, all things considered. So yeah, I walked away from this one shot, having a positive impression of the potential of the premise, but I'm not like super into the, execution.
I'm not
because
either, no.
I just, don't think that all the elements have really added up to something cohesive. Like, there's a good nugget of idea here in terms of the comedy and, like, the dynamic between Owen and his grandfather and, like, playing that up. But then everything else around it and the actual action and conveying the hockey game, like, none of that worked for me, really. So, I'm not negative on I'm not negative on the one shot, but I'm not, like, positive on it either. I find what it did well and what it didn't do well interesting. So that's why I had a lot to say about it, I guess.
Yeah, like, this is probably going to sound really nerdy, but, like, when I was on Annie List earlier, kind of adding this to, like, you know, my list or whatever, I actually had a really hard time as far as, like, a numerical score, because, like, I was bored with it. So, like, when I'm bored with something, like, it's easier for me to rate something that, like, I either really loved or really hate. But as far as, like, something that, like, I think is really boring and something that, like, I know I'm not going to think about, like, the next day or whatever, it's really hard for me to give, like, a numerical value to something like that. So, like, I think I spent, like, 5 minutes trying to think, like, what number would I give this, like, out of 10? And I think I ended up giving it, like, a 3 because, like, I really just was not into Amano's art as far as her action sequences at all. And like I said, I didn't really care about the characters, and it was just one of those things where it's like, I really, really want a really cool ice hockey manga, and this to me just isn't it. This is something I really struggle with when it comes to, like, talking about, say, like canceled Jump series or whatever, where it's like, I really like the ideas here, but does that mean it's any good? Like, that's something I constantly struggle with. But I think in this case, it's very clear that, like, I like the idea of the premise. Like, I want an ice hockey manga, but I feel like the ideas conveyed in this one shot just aren't executed very well. And honestly, I feel like I'm probably going to end up forgetting this one shot. For the most part. Like, I'll probably, every once in a while, I'll probably be like, oh yeah, that exists. And then I just won't think about it again.
Yeah, it's a shame. I want to like Akira Amano stuff, but everything I've seen from her, I haven't really gelled with. So I was hoping Hot could be the thing that was like, okay, finally, I'm into something she's done. But, well, it's definitely the most positive impression I've had of any of her work so far, but it's still not something that I'm in love with.
Yeah, like, as somebody who has barely read any of her other stuff, I just want to say I do not think she is, like, bad at what she does per se, but, like, this also doesn't give me hope that I will necessarily enjoy, like, either Reborn or Eldalive, honestly, personally speaking. Like, I don't know, just as far as her work goes, it wasn't, like, the best impression.
Yeah, you could say we were pretty cold on Hot.
I mean, yeah, that's, like, the best way to put it. I think we could probably just actually end the discussion there, because I don't really have anything else to say about it.
Pretty much, and I think that does it for this episode of Manga Mavericks.